Welcome, everyone, to another episode of HR and Payroll 2.0. I'm Pete Tiliakis, and as always, I'm joined by the legendary Julie Fernandez. Welcome, Julie.
Thanks, Pete. We got some fun stuff today.
Yes. I'm so excited to welcome our guest this week. It is Frank Leistner, the SVP of Global Payroll and Professional Services at the new Strada Global. So welcome, Frank. I'm so excited to have you.
Yeah, excited to be here with you both, Pete and Julie. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We go way back, all three of us. I think we've been in the industry together at some point along the way. So yeah, it's nice to have you. It's like having a friend on, and we really appreciate it. And so, look, I wanted to get started by saying congratulations. I'm excited for what's going on over at Strada Global. And for those of you that don't know Strada, as we've talked about on some of our past episodes, that's what we've been referring to as the new company, the new divestiture from Alight. And I think some of the best parts of Alight, right? The pro services, the managed services, the Workday practice, the SAP practice. So much excitement around that. And I love that you guys have a new home. But tell us about that. What's it like? New branding, new, I guess new, but not new, right? You guys are all kind of going together.
Well, yeah, that's the key thing too. Yeah, no. So we're super excited. You hit it. It's the best year out of Alight of our payroll and professional services business, but it's got 35 years of history. If you think all the way back to the BPO move to cloud to bringing global payroll and HCM and some of the leading technologies together. So we've got 35 years of history, and we're excited for a new chapter where we can have the right focus with the 8,000 colleagues that we've got, the 1,500 clients, and all the leading technologies that we can help bring together for clients. So, we couldn't be more excited about the new brand, the new launch, but we're also, excited about continuing to do what we do for clients and bringing that to the market.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's some excellent heritage there that's going with you, and I'm excited for you guys to find a new home. I think maybe Alight, I think it underappreciated that capability, and really happy to see you guys are going to have a home that's going to really invest in that. And look, you're still going to be working with Alight. I know you guys are in lockstep with them on clients and deals and that sort of thing. So I know there's going to still be a close partnership there. Yeah, exciting stuff.
Yeah, then we had a great run with Alight, and I think the ability for us to split off and kind of refocus on both the key areas of our business and work together over time is going to only allow us to continue to innovate faster and bring more to the clients that we work with. So excited about it.
Something kind of unique and that makes this smoother maybe than the average acquisition, the average divestiture, the average split is, the fact that there was already kind of a group that was used to working as the same people going over. Sometimes when there's splits out there in the environment, there's a little rustling of feathers and people don't know where they're going, and there aren't clear lines. And in this case, the business lines have been clear. And I echo Pete saying this, to me, the most exciting part of the business, it's the global bit. It's the bit that has all the payroll and all the, and all the AMS and technology stuff in it. But that makes it smoother than the average bear for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we got 8,000 colleagues, and you hit it on the head, Julie. I think there's maybe out of that, there's a few hundred people, maybe 300 people whose jobs are changing. So, and the same leadership that's been in place for a long time. So it allows us to quickly keep doing what we're doing, and then, create the momentum of excitement around a new brand, a new focus on that part of the business, to quickly kind of just continue to what we're doing and build on it. So excited about it.
Yeah, a lot of people, I think that's going to be a hard part, right? Is being able to make sure you can articulate that 30 plus years, right? Because we all know it goes back maybe even to the Exalt days, right? The NGA, the Arenso side, the Northgate side. Yeah, there was so many parts of that.
Yeah. It goes back to the Arenso
way back.
Side, Hewitt side with Exalt, and then the move to the cloud with bringing on OmniPoint and and then Alight bringing in global payroll together and all that. So yeah, it's a really rich history. We couldn't be more excited about it. We had some cool internal videos when we launched. There'll be some external versions of it where it just really played into the heritage, so it could speak to everyone and all. And it's really about taking that and building on it going forward in the next chapter of where each one of those things, where there was different companies that came together or went public or private or spun off or got bought or those things. But every time that asset got more valuable to clients and more set of capabilities that we brought together. So we see this as the next version of that.
Yeah.
So are there any milestones or kind of sneak peeks that we should be looking for? We're pretty good about seeing and trying to speak to them as they come up. But
Yeah.
any places or things or timing of key stuff we should be looking for where you'll be making noise?
Yeah, so a couple things. So one, I'd say we couldn't be more excited to keep doing what we're doing. So first and foremost, delivering for our clients and being out in the market and innovating, and um, that's a key focus for us. Same roadmap as we have today. We'll continue around how we're expanding our partnerships, how we're continuing to build on the work that we do, with Workday and SAP and Oracle, the global payroll advancements we're doing with their engine. So same focus, same, we're going to continue that as job one. You'll see us show up, in the same places we typically show up, but more. And so we're making a big splash, whether it be Success Connect or Rising or Cloud World or trade shows in Brazil and Mexico and Europe, et cetera, over the course of the next couple months. So we'll be out in full force with the new brand, making sure folks remember, where we came from and who we are and what we've got to offer. And in terms of a sneak peek, I would say, I think this might release in the next couple weeks. I'd say, hey, check. We might have some press releases coming out around that time that I'm super excited about how we'll take our existing set of services to market in a different way that I think is going to add a tremendous amount of value to clients and a different way to do it. So around our global payroll offering. So a little bit more to come. That's maybe one sneak peek, but a lot of the same. And then we look forward to continuing to talk about, and hope we can come back and we've got some other announcements further down the line.
Yeah.
That's great to know. We're only like weeks away from hitting conference season, right?
Oh,
in the
my
fall.
Lord.
And
It's busy.
Oh yeah.
so if anybody hasn't figured you out yet, they're gonna see some new cool green stuff going on.
That's right.
Yeah. Strada World Tour. Well, look, I love it. So, look, congratulations, Frank. Congrats to you and Luke both, and the whole team. Right, I know there's a lot of work going on over there. Jordana and team are doing a lot on the branding. So, all the best. We're going to be staying close to it, Julie. I know you already are working with clients
Indeed.
on that side, on the buy side. I'm obviously staying close to it from an analyst side. So, we'll be keeping you guys certainly posted on what's going on there, and maybe we'll get to catch up out on the road, Frank, somewhere Workday Rising or somewhere else, hopefully.
I'll be there.
Good, man. Good. I always love it, man. I always love catching up with you guys. We got to catch up right around the time you guys were announcing the split at Payroll Org. So that was pretty cool too. But
yeah. So speaking of, right?
Yeah. Speaking of, right. I wanted to talk about the Executive Summit because you guys were there. Alight actually sponsored that Executive Summit at Payroll Congress. And I just wanted to, kind of talk on that a little bit and pick that up because we've talked about it a little here, Julie and I. But I think it was just really nice. I don't know. I know the plan is to continue to run that. I hope I'll be a part of it. I'm not sure.
Hi there. I'm Peter Zollman. I'm a co-host of the Inside Job Boards and Recruitment Marketplaces podcast.
And I'm Stephen Rothberg, and I guess that makes me the other co-host.
Every other week, we're joined by guests from the world's leading job sites.
Together, we analyze news about general, niche, and aggregator job board and recruitment marketplaces sites.
Make sure you sign up and subscribe today.
But I really just think it's exciting that we're having, I think it's a first step towards getting payroll, having conversations with a senior level executive group about payroll, right? We haven't commonly been the front of the conversation, right? It's always been sort of an afterthought. And I think it's exciting. It's a huge step forward, I believe, for us, for payroll, to be in that position and actually having conversations at that level. So, one of the things that we found in the research I recently did with the Payroll Profession Confidence Index was the impact when executives are deeper engaged or have better relationships with payroll are significantly, just very significant, right? There was, I think there was a 4x or 3x on value increase. There was a better engagement in terms of how payroll was being treated or viewed in the organization. Just so many positive outcomes. But just wanted to see what your thoughts were from the day, and what maybe you're hearing from organizations out there that are looking at payroll now differently.
When we heard that was going to happen at the Payroll Conference, one, I personally thought it was going to be a great step forward, and two, we were excited to sponsor it because I think to your point, it brings a different level of discussion. I think it brings a different level of focus. I think it brings the right folks together to really make an impact and drive companies and teams and et cetera, where they need to go going forward. So I was super excited about it. We were even talking about it yesterday. And the fact that we couldn't be, we're more excited to kind of get into what that may look like next year and how we can make it, a richer experience and bring more to the table in terms of people and conversations, et cetera. So I think that's one I hope continues, and continues more than once a year.
Yeah, and I almost wonder if we need to start, hopefully getting those conversations going outside of those events, right? Like I would love to see there be more of a, and I don't know how you do it, right? We've got to get payroll some airtime in front of executives, I think, and an opportunity, and that's going to take payroll doing that somewhat for themselves, right? Stepping forward and putting themselves out there. But I also would love to just see that awareness coming out, and that's what I'm hoping my report did. But Julie, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, I know you were there. What are you seeing? I mean, do you think the expectations, I know the expectations for payroll are changing, but do you think that the organizations are realizing that yet, that they should be expecting something more from payroll than just processing checks?
I think so. And I think part of it is because practitioners and leaders are starting to talk more about it. When we first started talking about a seat at the table or how strategic, payroll can and should be in an organization, there weren't a lot of voices that were highlighting that, and it feels like they're starting to now kind of come out and be heard a little bit more. And so first of all, just that awareness of people thinking, I am in a strategic place. My role is strategic. My navigating my career from this jumping point is strategic, and so that has changed in the last even just year or two, I would say. I really enjoyed having a role in that event. And I would also hope to be able to continue that, because I do think it's a great forum. It's been overdue. It was well received, I understand, from Payroll Org. They got some really great feedback from folks about the conversations that were being had there and the interaction. And so, it's been overdue, and I think it's starting to pick up a little bit of momentum around the world. That's the crazy thing for payroll. Sometimes it has to be, it's not just a local or a US thing there. It really starts to come down to some of the global aspects of that as well. And can't coordinate that easily and make that happen unless it's organic.
You're right. I mean, I wonder, I've been kind of talking about like the competitive advantage that payroll can, or at least exploring it, right? And I'm not entirely sure it can be a direct competitive advantage, but I definitely know it can be a disadvantage when you're executing on things. But what are your thoughts on that, Frank? I mean, do you think payroll, it can be a competitive advantage, or certainly a disadvantage, but do you think it could be an advantage in some way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, your survey highlighted so many different interesting things, and I think we talked about there, but I think, this concept of our executives aware of some of the changes, they're aware when things go wrong. They're definitely aware when things need to happen within the organization, and they can't do them as readily or easily as they hoped. And I think, you're starting to see more organizations be proactive in that nature. These types of conversations can allow companies to be more proactive. And I think that's the key, right? Is we see a small slice of that, but that's what needs to increase, is the proactive conversations around how it sits within the organization, how CFOs, CHROs, and, even more importantly, all the different partnerships that you talked about, but IT, right, coming together to enable it, to allow the company strategy to move forward.
Yeah.
So those are the things that need to happen more. I think these types of conversations can allow that to be realized before something goes wrong or something happens that you need to figure it out.
Who owns it has been one of the longest open questions on the planet, right? There's finance involved, there's shared services, there's HR. And I think that's an interesting question. How strategic it is and where it fits in the picture oftentimes depends a little bit on who is guiding transformation and what their point of view is and what their perspective is. So I love, the combination of HR technology transformation and the role that these big HCM, initiatives are playing. It doesn't usually put payroll in the driver's seat. And so whether it's included or not, or how you then use that as a lever to get to a more strategic or harmonized payroll solution, may or may not be priority one, but, these things just take on a different life depending on who's driving what part of a transformation. And payroll is in the limelight or it's not, and it waits its turn, or it's just a really critical part of a transformation that has broader objectives.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah. I think one of the things I've been positioning when I talk to executives about payroll is the speed and agility that you're lacking if payroll is not modernized or payroll is not empowered, right? And that comes in the form of speed to executing on strategy, whether that's a merger, whether that's a divestiture or some expansion, but also the agility, right? Being able to have the ability to use your data to pair with other data and see around the next corner. I think that's the disadvantage organizations are at when they don't have that, right? And then to some extent, maybe a lot of that is steeped in historical sort of views of payroll as this just process that always happens, right? It never fails, or when it does, payroll figures it out, makes it right. And I think to some extent, they've almost been a victim of their own success in some ways, right? Like we talk about the electricity thing, right? Payroll is like electricity. You flip the light switch on, the lights come on, no one complains. But if the lights don't come on, people are complaining. But what happens is I think payroll gets set up in an operating model that isn't necessarily enabling their best athleticism, and they're doing the best that they can. And then when something happens, everyone looks and goes, well, what's wrong with payroll? Well, payroll's doing their job with one arm tied behind their back, right? They're doing it with less than support, less than investment. And then you wonder why, and then those catalyst moments, I think, make that paradigm shift become more aware. But until that happens, which payroll would never let happen if, over their dead bodies, you know what I mean? It's almost like this, it's almost like a chicken or the egg, right? Like what's going to happen first? Payroll needs to fail in order for people to realize there's a problem. But if payroll fails, then it's payroll's fault, right? And meanwhile, they're just not really in a position to actually perform well. So I think that's part of the conundrum here in a way.
Yeah.
You guys, any thoughts on that? Is that
No,
crazy?
I totally agree. I mean, I see too many situations where it's a little bit of a.
Welcome to the Hire Her podcast, where women in talent call all the shots. We know, another recruiting podcast, just what the industry needs. Okay, but hear us out. You ever spend hours sourcing that perfect candidate, but they end up ghosting you harder than your hinge date? Or finally, you get that hiring manager feedback, only for them to, of course, say, can we see more candidates? Lame, right? But let's talk about what's really lame in the industry. How is it that 65% of recruiters are brilliant women, yet most of the decision makers look like a convention for middle-aged dudes named Brad?
That's where we come in. Hire Her isn't just another podcast about hiring trends you already heard like 50 times this week. We're here to elevate women in talent, share their career journeys, and make sure they take the lead. Because let's face it, if recruiting is the backbone of every company, why are we still fighting for a seat at the table? So whether you're a recruiter, a talent leader, or just someone trying to swim through the sausage fest of TA leadership, we got you, girl. Welcome to Hire Her, the recruiting podcast where women's voices aren't just heard, but they're leading the conversation.
So subscribe now, because middle management Brad sure as hell isn't going to do it for you.
Hey, this is William Tincup, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about Practitioner Corner podcast. It's a wonderful podcast about the journey, the paths of how practitioners, both HR and TA, kind of go from high school, college, all the way to where they are right now. Some of the things that they've learned, how they've been successful, people that thrive around them, etc. It's a fun podcast. You'll love it. You'll learn from it. Subscribe to it. Thanks.
If it's not broke, don't fix it. But and that's not really good payroll strategy, because like you have the iceberg, kind of analogy. I'd say it's kind of like a duck on water too, right? Like it may appear calm on the surface, but once you take a peek underneath, there's a lot going on underneath that creates that risk, and proactively addressing that is critical, because otherwise it's just going to become harder. You'll have a failure point, or you won't be able to, at your point, look around the next corner in a way that you need to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That scalability, reliability, and stability of payroll is so key. And we saw that just recently with the CrowdStrike thing, right? Like there was a lot of angst with payroll, people being able to get into their systems and do what they needed to do on that. I think it was a Thursday or a Friday, if I'm not mistaken. So there had to be some panic, I'm sure, for some. And hopefully, and look, there may have been some that were in a modern state, but using, that provider, I won't name them, that caused that. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot to this, right? That has to be, the lights have to always come on when it comes to payroll. We can't, and HR as well, right? We can't not have that happen. So yeah, crazy. Julie, are you seeing you having any conversations right now with any of your clients when it comes to what we just went through with the IT outage and people maybe making sort of questioning what they're using and what they might be using going forward?
I think that particular event just was so broad and struck so many areas of society that maybe payroll isn't the loudest, right? It was on a Friday, and sometimes payroll processing activities are kind of closed and ready to go at that point in time. So I have no doubt, anytime you're an affected party in something that is big and unfortunate, it can drive behaviors. But I wouldn't say I've seen more uptick recently in folks definitely focused on payroll and understanding how hairy it is underneath the seams, and recognizing it's bigger than just trying to pick a vendor and throw one guy in there who handles everything in the world, right? But I don't think I link it to that particular event necessarily. I haven't seen a lot of that.
Yeah, no, agreed. One of the things too, like we found out with the Payroll Profession Confidence Index, and we've seen it in other studies too, is just the low level of maturity that there is for payroll globally, right? I think we had only about 12%, and I think it was only 9 on the multi-country companies that responded in the PPCI that said that they actually were in a transformed state. And it's like, I feel like, and I've been saying this maybe for a while as an analyst, both on the core HR side, just because I do a lot with HCM, I do a lot in the payroll world, that these HRs and payroll firm, groups are not moving fast enough, right? The companies are not investing, I don't think, digesting some of this quick enough. And I think you've got a lot of folks that are still way behind in not just payroll, but maybe in some other areas. But Frank, I don't know. What do you see is like, what's holding companies back? I mean, you guys are having a lot of transformation conversations. What's the roadblock? It almost feels like a no-brainer to be investing in these things.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a number of things. But themes that I see around that. One is, companies have grown up in lots of different ways, and they've put lots of pieces together, and so there's not a single path forward that seems. So knowing how to start and where to go, and start to move in that direction can be hard. I think especially if you're fighting things around, like Julie talked about, who owns it? How do I become more cross-functional in nature? And then there's organizations that, on top of that, are very decentralized, or decision making is decentralized, or regional or local. And they're trying to do this on their own and being a procurement driven type thing. So those are all different themes that we see. And it doesn't need to be this big thing either. Progress can be made towards that in incremental steps, right? And steps as you go. But the best is stepping back and taking a look at it, and start to put a cohesive strategy together and centralizing that decision making and driving the organization forward. That's hard. And it requires that cross-functional, whether it's finance or HR or IT or whatever owned. It takes all of those partnerships across the business to drive that strategy forward in a way that makes sense, because it ties to payroll sits in the middle of everything, whether it be your IT strategy, your legal components, etc.
Yeah, this is something I've tried to emphasize to people, that payroll knows more about the entire organization than almost anyone else. And sometimes people are like, how is that possible? I'm like, you have no idea. All roads lead to us. Like, if we don't know everyone's process, we don't know everyone's function, we can't do ours oftentimes. So yeah, it's there's so much information and so much knowledge that could be brought out of that group. I just wish more would tap into it. Julie, what were you? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, there is really, truly, across all of the spectrum of HR transformation, I don't believe there's any more complicated stakeholder roadmap than payroll. And I also believe, navigating a complex stakeholder environment that crosses different parts of the organization, it's a double whammy. It requires a personality and, having creds in your organization to be able to, to align folks and get to actionable decisions. And so, you need the right talent to do that. You need you need some alignment. And so that makes it tricky business. It's definitely one of the trickier things you could aspire to do.
Yeah. Yeah, the other thing too, we talk a lot about the invested versus leaders that are investing, right? Putting money on the table versus being culturally engaged in what, in improving the position for payroll and the engagement. But when you look at what we saw on the Payroll Profession Confidence Index, payroll wasn't asking for more technology, right? They weren't asking for more investment from the perspective of, we just want more heads, or we want, that sort of thing. It was education. It was a seat at the table and proactive engagement in what's going on in the organization so that they could actually perform at their best, right? And hopefully it also included some sort of transformation and investment to give them the tools to do that. But I think if you read between the lines, not even really read between the lines, the actual feedback we got was that they just wanted proactive engagement. They wanted an opportunity to be championed as a center of expertise versus some sort of reactive, back office processor, right? But like I don't know how like again going back to those catalysts, like how do we get senior leaders to have that conversation and understand that all payroll is asking for is an opportunity to perform well. And that kind of breaks my heart because it's like, man, and that leads me to one of my other concerns that we've talked about, Julie, is the fact that we're going to lose a lot of talent out of this space if we don't start nurturing and caring for them. But I just think that, one of the things we've got to get in leaders to understand is there's got to be a cultural sort of slant towards payroll being a priority. And I just don't know that enough companies have come around to that yet. And it's leaving payroll to sort of, again, limp along with one arm or one leg tied, and that's no way to run a race, right? It's not going to lead to the best results. But any thoughts on that, Julie? Are you seeing, or Frank, are you guys seeing anything come around where leaders are starting to look at payroll maybe a little bit differently and engage them in a more proactive way? Because that's what I think would be a huge milestone out of this, if we could just get payroll to become more of a first stop on the list of SMEs we need to engage versus sort of last to know in the organization.
What does it really take to lead with impact in today's ever-evolving world? Welcome to Inside the C-Suite, the podcast where influence, energy, innovation, and empathy converge. Hi, I'm Christy Honeycutt, your host. Join me as I sit down with the boldest voices in leadership, visionaries who are not just making decisions, but making a difference. In every episode, we explore the heart of leadership. How do high-performing leaders harness their energy? How do they lead with empathy without losing their edge? How do they turn disruption into innovation and pressure into purpose? You'll hear unfiltered stories of adversity, resilience, and the raw moments that shaped true influence. This isn't about perfection. It's about presence, passion, and the energetic exchange that fuels transformation. Inside the C-Suite is your invitation to lead from a deeper place with intention, connection, and courage. If you're ready to go beyond the surface and unlock what really moves leaders to action, hit subscribe and step inside. You can find us wherever you get your podcast fix. Inside the C-Suite, well, we're an energetic exchange. Let's lead with influence, live with energy, and create with empathy.
Anything you guys are seeing there?
Yeah, I'll just say because of the interconnectedness, it's almost hard to say are leaders thinking about payroll when that leads sometimes to even deeper questions about time. As you know, some of the inputs to payroll create a lot of the hairiness. And so, figuring out exactly where and when an organization is really ready, it feels kind of binary to me. It always has. Either I'm going to suck it up and deal with it, or I'm excited about it and I'm going to do it, or I'm terrified. And so I'm just going to work around it as best I can until I really have to do something.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that concept of investing or invest. I mean, the best companies are doing both, right? They're investing in things and then they're invested in how it's going to move forward. And, there's, like I said, we're seeing a growing, I think people are waking up at the executive level. We're seeing more proactive conversations, especially with companies that are a little more innovative or, have big ambitions to do certain things strategically. They're there. But, by and large, what we see is, a procurement driven, here's a piece of something I need help with. Here's a regional decision I need to make. That's the bulk of how clients interact with us. But to Julie's point, that's why, at least in my world that I live in, we've had to grow beyond payroll and take on a lot of these leading technologies, because we feel like, there is such an intersection between those things that you need to be able to bring those things together to drive payroll forward. It can't just be a payroll thing. Unfortunately, it needs to be tied to how it's going to work cross-functionally across these other areas and drive that business strategy forward.
I think that's so important, Frank,
It
and the
is.
way that knitting those two together actually helps get to decision makers as well, because those decisions are, are very often tied so closely to the technology strategy and all of those pieces. And so it feels like it's always felt like a natural to me to have those things kind of tied at the hip.
Yeah. Frank, what about AI? You guys having obviously you're having conversations with executives. Like, what's sort of the sentiment of the organizations that you're talking to, the leaders you're talking to, when it comes to AI, the ability to help with payroll or even just HR? I know you guys are out there doing a lot of work with that.
Yeah, we're doing a ton of work.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, a ton of work. We got a lot going on. Not here to talk about what we're doing there, but what I do hear from clients is just not understanding it is the unknown and the uncertainty and what it will bring. And I've seen to one end of the spectrum, I've seen high level executives be concerned about signing longer term contracts, not knowing what's going to happen in 5 to 7 years, to just interested in how we're going to bring value through that product. So you've got this whole big spectrum of where people are coming from on it, but it's really about how is it really going to change? What areas will it change, and how can it help me and our organizations be more effective? And how can I, as a leader, right, whether I be a CHRO or CFO or an IT, like how can it help me in terms of the way that we work to drive different outcomes, right? Because they're all trying to figure out how to embrace it, I think, at this stage, and it's just a little bit of an unknown of how to do that.
Yeah. And there's a balance of the front end for the customer and also the back end for things like HR and finance. I know there's always that, right? You're always going to lean into your customer first. So good to have that learning up front, I think, and then bring it to the back office. But Julie, what do you think? Any thoughts here just around any of these things? I mean, do you think AI can be the I don't know if it's going to save payroll, but I definitely think it can create an opportunity for payroll to have more time and more activation of their data to bring about those sort of prescriptive, strategic advisor kind of skill sets for them. But what do you think? Do you think it'll move the needle on payroll or HR even for this issue of bringing the C-suite and the front line together?
Yeah, I think, initially at least there's just some use cases that are going to be table stakes stuff, right? And it just, the way you want to automate intelligently instead of necessarily saying IA, but you do want intelligent automation. And there's some more obvious applications. I think I'm always very interested in hearing, the more creative things or things that tackle or go to a niche thing. Compliance is, nitty gritty and hairy. We've had some folks talk about compliance and automation, some real different lens to that. But like most things, payroll has some fixed processes. So there's lots of great opportunities, and it will become table stakes very quickly, I think. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And I think we're all kind of, we're living with it now, right? I mean, in our personal lives, whether it's Spotify, Netflix, whatever, your Alexa, it all has something. She'll probably wake up here in a second now. It's present, right? And why not, right? Why not engage it? And I think it's going to be, I think the augmentation element of this is the opportunity, because for so long, payroll has been bogged down, HR has been bogged down with the minutia. This, I think, is where we can really use some help, right? And give us that insight that we're all sitting on, and be able to have those conversations and champion the things that we want to see outcomes for the business. So, it's exciting times. I hope that next year we're going to be running this survey again. I hope next year we're going to have maybe a different conversation, see some different movement on what the priority of payroll and the understanding for payroll and the value. I want to see more. I think we only had 34% saying they're getting the real value out of their payroll, pure ROI, whereas we had others 70+% that weren't. So I'd love to see that move forward. We got a lot of work to do, right? We have to keep evangelizing, I think, make sure people understand there's a lot of power in payroll. And I think firms are missing out on it when they're not giving them the best opportunity to be their best. So look, Frank, this has been fantastic. I think Julie and I would probably love to keep opining with you on things, but anything else to add here? Where can we find you? Where can we connect with you? And what's next, man? What's next for Frank and Strada?
Yeah, no, well, look, I appreciate you having me on. It's been fun. I think we could talk for hours on some of these topics and get into specific use cases and things like that. There's a ton to unpack here, but to your point, there's a tremendous amount of activity going on in the market to figure out how to move forward. That's the one thing I can say with 100% confidence. Whether it's healthy or unhealthy or the best way to go about it, I'm not sure all the time. But there's a ton of everybody's trying, and I think it's going to continue to more and more best practices around how to move forward and do these things, and AI will enable that to move faster. So I'm excited about that. In terms of me and Strada, you'll see it at all the shows. You're welcome to reach out directly. You guys know how to get a hold of me. Anybody in the audience that wants to have further conversations, I'd love to have them. So
yeah,
open door.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll see you on the road. I'll drop your LinkedIn out here in the comments. I'll make sure the Strada website's out there as well in case folks want to check that out. And yeah, Julie, what else? What do you got going on? Anything to add here before we wrap up?
Oh, geez. Well, fall conference season. I think we've been talking compensation survey is our next little micro poll, and I know you link out to that pretty regularly. And
yes.
I love the client work, and so this is a time of year when I'm really deep in it and working with folks that are figuring out what's happening next. And there's just a lot of pipeline out there, which means there's this pent up bunch of activity.
Yep.
And I think as Frank said so well, like people are trying, like there's a lot going on. They're trying to figure out what to do to take advantage of the dynamic space in the market. So that always drives just a lot of successes and then some failures. So
oh yeah, and it's overwhelming. The market is so full of solutions that it is overwhelming. I have a lot of buyer conversations on just that. What's the difference between one versus the other, and what's right for us? I think everyone's trying to navigate through that, and that's a good thing, right? I mean, gosh, 10 years ago there weren't solutions for some of these micro problems in HR and payroll. Now there are. Now we've got AI really proliferating and humming along. So I think it's exciting. I think it's better time than ever in the history of HR and payroll to be shaping the future that you want. And yeah, there's a lot of unknowns, but it's one of those things where I think the sooner you start, the sooner you're going to arrive, right? So yeah, I love it. Well, look, hey, and Julie, how long is your survey running? We have it in the comments. I want to make sure everybody knows that's out there. That's your compensation strategy benchmark, not benchmarking as in salaries.
That's right. That's correct. And it's just 15 questions. So you don't have to be a comp COE person to answer that on behalf of, what's going on and how transparent and what kind of approach there is to pay. 15 short questions. Do it on a Friday when you're like going, oh, I wish it was 5 o'clock already. And it'll run solidly through August and then maybe a little bit into September. But you know what? That just encourages people to wait and do it later. Just go do it now. It's 10 minutes.
Yeah, jump on it. Well, look, we appreciate it. Frank, thank you so much for coming on. Congrats to you and Strada Global. And we will see you out there on the fall conference tour.
I look forward to it.
Thanks, everyone.